Edward's life was built on a foundation of silence. His home, a pristine, colonial-style dwelling on Willow Creek cul-de-sac, was more than just a house. It was a fortress of quiet, ordered living. For Edward, a 47-year-old financial analyst specializing in risk assessment, order was paramount. His work demanded a profound stillness, a deep concentration that allowed him to untangle the knotted, multi-layered accounts of corporate fraud. He brought that same meticulous need for control into his private life. For 15 years, Edward had tended his small front garden with the precision of a topiary artist. The boxwoods were always uniformly sheared, the mulch perpetually dark and fresh. He enjoyed the predictable rhythm of his week. Tuesday morning brought the high-pitched squeal of the street sweeper. Thursday, the predictable rumble of the trash truck. He cherished the profound, insulating silence of his suburban cul-de-sac, a silence he had paid a significant premium to secure. Edward was a creature of routine, finding not just comfort, but emotional security in the absence of noise, in the verifiable fact that nothing unexpected would intrude. His inner world was complex and volatile, making his external world an absolute necessity of predictability. He went to bed at 10:30 p.m., woke at 6:01 a.m., and worked from a soundproofed home office on the 3rd floor. Its windows double-paned to filter out the few sounds the neighborhood occasionally generated. He measured his quality of life not by possessions, but by decibels. His peace was his most valuable asset. Then the moving vans came. They arrived at 5 a.m. on a Friday, an intrusion that shattered the established schedule of the neighborhood. The vans were massive commercial vehicles, not the tidy, white consumer trucks Edward expected. They were followed by a procession of 2 anonymous black SUVs with tinted windows. Out of the lead SUV stepped Sandeep. Sandeep was a large man, physically imposing, with a booming laugh that seemed too loud for the suburban air and an unsettlingly fixed smile. It was a smile that didn't crease the skin around his eyes, a mask of perpetual, unearned jollity. He wore a crisp, expensive shirt and expensive cologne that Edward could smell from 10 feet away. Edward, despite his immediate irritation at the early morning disruption, genuinely tried to be the friendly neighbor. He believed in maintaining the social contract of the neighborhood. The following day, he walked across the immaculate lawn, a chilled bottle of imported Italian Pinot Noir and a printed list of local recommendations in hand. "Welcome to Willow Creek." "Sandeep," Edward greeted him, offering the wine. "I'm Edward, just across the way. If you need anything, please ask." Sandeep accepted the gesture with a theatrical lack of interest. He held the bottle loosely, glancing at the label before handing it off to an unseen assistant lurking in the doorway. Sandeep clapped Edward hard on the shoulder, a tactile violation that made Edward recoil internally. Sandeep boomed, "Ah, Edward. Thank you. I'm Sandeep. We'll be quite a vibrant addition to the neighborhood. We love life, my friend. Plenty of excitement, you know. Good neighbors, good times. We'll bring some much-needed action to this sleepy street." Edward offered a tight, polite smile. "The street is comfortable as it is, thank you." "We value our quiet here," Sandeep laughed, a sound like a grenade going off in Edward's carefully constructed silence. "We'll see about that. Go on, Edward. Enjoy your quiet. We have much work to do." He turned away, the smile dropping instantly, revealing a face etched with cold calculation as he spoke sharply to one of the men unloading a plain, unlabeled wooden crate from the back of the black SUV. Edward retreated, his initial annoyance curdling into a profound sense of dread. The noise began immediately. It was not the occasional sound of a family settling in. It was a constant, grinding erosion of peace. It started on the very first night. The relentless bass of music began precisely at 9:02 p.m. It wasn't loud enough to violate a legal sound ordinance, but it was set at a low, persistent frequency that seemed designed to vibrate through the very foundation of Edward's home. It wasn't music, so much as a physical thrumming that rattled the porcelain on his mantelpiece and kept him awake. The music continued well past midnight on weeknights, an audible middle finger to the neighborhood. Then came the second layer of sound, the boisterous, unfiltered shouts of conversation. Sandeep's voice, amplified by his size and arrogance, seemed to carry unnaturally far. There were slamming doors, the crash of heavy objects, and the perpetual sound of machinery, saws and drills running late at night, and, most frequently, the deep, ominous rumble of large, expensive cars idling for long periods in the driveway. The calm silence Edward had paid a premium for was replaced by a perpetual, exhausting cacophony. Edward's initial approach was documented and deliberate. He started with polite, formal notes, carefully typed on his best letterhead, slipped under Sandeep's door. First note, Day 3. Welcome to the neighborhood. Could you perhaps turn the music down after 11 p.m.? My job requires early hours and deep concentration. Thank you for your consideration. Edward received no reply. The music remained constant. Second note, Day 10. Dear Mr. Sandeep, I must reiterate my request regarding the noise levels after 11 p.m. The bass frequencies are causing a disturbance. I am documenting the times of the disruptions. The only response was Sandeep's dismissive wave when Edward tried to make eye contact over the property line the next morning. The fixed, chilling smile returned, a terrifying mixture of pleasantry and absolute menace that never reached his eyes. Edward finally tried a face-to-face confrontation, standing by the edge of his property. He needed the control of a direct statement. Edward said, his voice measured, Sandeep, I need you to respect the quiet hours in this neighborhood. The noise is constant. Sandeep talked over him, simultaneously hosing down his driveway. A bizarre, loud activity at 9 p.m. Sandeep boomed, his disregard for personal space and boundaries absolute. It's life, my friend. This is just a little engine work. Enjoy the party. You need more life in your life, Edward. You're too stiff. I am not stiff. I am asking for respect, Edward insisted. Sandeep simply turned the hose on a higher setting, effectively drowning out Edward's voice with a spray of water that just kissed Edward's polished shoes. The message was clear. Edward was irrelevant. The constant disrespect began to take a heavy psychological toll. Edward, usually sharp and rested, became frayed and perpetually anxious. He was always listening, always waiting for the next violation of the sound barrier. His third-floor office, once a sanctuary, became a nerve-wracking observation post. He developed a permanent tension headache, a tight band of pain across his forehead that never fully subsided. His focus at work, he was an analyst who required intense, uninterrupted concentration to identify anomalies in complex financial data, began to suffer. He started missing key details, misreading balance sheets, and making minor calculation errors. His boss, noticing the slip in Edward's almost flawless record, called him in for a performance review. Edward explained, I am having trouble sleeping. There is a persistent noise issue at my residence. His boss replied, Edward, noise is part of life. You have to tune it out. Your performance cannot continue to dip. Edward realized that his fight for quiet was jeopardizing his entire livelihood. He stopped confronting Sandeep directly and retreated into documentation. He began logging every noise complaint, every infraction, creating a meticulous, typed log that grew to dozens of pages, complete with time, duration, and decibel estimates. This log was a desperate monument to his lost peace, a physical manifestation of his psychological breakdown. As his resentment deepened, Edward's initial annoyance morphed into a cold, fearful curiosity. Sandeep's activities, viewed through the lens of Edward's analyst mind, didn't fit the profile of a normal, loud family or even a typical jerk neighbor. They were too aggressive, too constant, and too organized. The party wasn't a party. It was a revolving door of suspicious visitors. Edward noticed a pattern that terrified him with its implications. The visitors were never typical neighbors or friends. They arrived precisely between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. They were all men, dressed in expensive, ill-fitting suits, exchanging quick, intense conversations with Sandeep on his driveway or in his closed-off garage. They drove anonymous vehicles, mostly black, late-model, high-end SUVs, always idling with the engine running, ready for a quick exit. The transactions were swift, lasting never more than 10 minutes. Most unsettlingly, they carried heavy, unmarked duffel bags. These were not the soft canvas of travel luggage. They were stiff, reinforced bags that seemed to contain nothing but dense, solid weight. They certainly weren't groceries, tools, or clothes. Edward observed one exchange on a Thursday night. A visitor handed Sandeep a bag that appeared to be nearly overflowing, and Sandeep exchanged it for a smaller, flat, sealed envelope. The tension in the exchange was palpable, the movements precise and paranoid. Edward saw Sandeep arguing with these men frequently. On one cold night, the polite, boisterous exterior cracked entirely. Edward watched from his darkened bedroom window as Sandeep, silent and menacing, slammed a much smaller man against the garage wall. Sandeep's face, illuminated by the distant street lamp, was a terrifying mask of rage. Edward could not hear the words, but the sight was enough. Sandeep forced the man to empty his pockets onto the driveway, then kicked the contents, a pile of currency and a burner phone, into the storm drain. His movement was that of a predator asserting dominance. Edward knew he needed hard evidence. He abandoned the idea of simply calling the police again. They had failed once. They would fail again without proof. He activated the quiet, methodical precision that made him a good analyst. He decided to conduct his own surveillance. He installed a high-resolution, motion-activated security camera disguised as a rustic, wooden bird feeder. The feeder was mounted on a 6-foot pole in his backyard, strategically positioned to point only at his own property lines and the end of his driveway, ensuring legal compliance, but capable of catching the peripheral movement of Sandeep's house and his visitors' cars. The setup was complex. Edward hardwired the camera into his soundproof office and encrypted the storage. The footage, he knew, was his only weapon. The first week of footage was mesmerizingly strange. Sandeep and his associates would spend hours moving boxes, but the deliveries were never typical. Always cash-sized containers, roughly shoebox dimensions. Always late at night and always handled with intense secrecy. They didn't use forklifts or hand trucks. They moved them quickly by hand from the back of rental trucks into the garage. The sheer physical effort required suggested immense weight. Edward estimated, based on the dimensions and the strain on the men's arms, that each box could contain hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of dollars in bundled currency. The sheer volume of cash transactions was the first digital clue Edward found. He moved his focus from the physical to the financial, his area of expertise. Edward used his deep knowledge of public records and financial tracking to start profiling Sandeep's business. Sandeep claimed to run Apex Luxury Auto Brokering, a high-end, discreet car sales business. Edward tracked the company through public property tax records and business filings. The filings were meticulous, too perfect, showing massive, frequent, and inexplicable bank deposits. The figures were staggering, yet completely divorced from any visible, legitimate commerce. There were almost never any high-end cars visible at the house, only anonymous rental trucks and the black SUVs of his visitors. The financial figures didn't add up. They were too large, too sporadic, and had no logical cash flow cycle. Edward ran a reverse analysis, using the deposit amounts to estimate the turnover, which led him to a terrifying conclusion. Sandeep was moving and cleaning over $5 million as a month. This wasn't local drug dealing. This was a high-level, sophisticated money laundering operation. The loud parties were not a nuisance. They were a cover. The noise wasn't annoying. It was deliberate intimidation, forcing neighbors into isolation so they wouldn't notice the silent, illicit work happening in the garage. Sandeep was using the facade of a perpetually busy, perpetually loud suburban home and a shell company to clean dark money. The situation became terrifyingly real one Tuesday night, 2 months after Sandeep's arrival. The air was thick with the scent of summer rain, and the neighborhood was blessedly, briefly quiet. Edward was sitting by his window, a single reading lamp on, meticulously organizing his evidence files, when the motion sensor on his disguised bird feeder camera pinged an alert. He pulled up the live feed on his encrypted tablet. His blood ran cold. Sandeep was in Edward's garage. Edward realized instantly the depth of the violation. Sandeep had somehow bypassed the code panel, a minor detail that later confirmed his professional ruthlessness, suggesting he used electronic spoofing, not guesswork. Sandeep was standing by Edward's vintage sedan, the only vehicle Edward truly loved. Edward watched, paralyzed by cold dread, as Sandeep deftly opened the car's hood. He wasn't stealing the car, he was tampering. Sandeep worked with a practiced, horrifying efficiency. First, he attached a small black magnetic device, a professional-grade GPS tracker, Edward knew immediately, high up on the inside of the wheel well. Then, he located the vehicle's onboard diagnostic, OBD, port hidden beneath the dashboard and inserted a minuscule data-skimming chip. The process took less than 90 seconds. He snapped the hood shut and stood up, dusting his hands off. It was calculated, silent, and deeply invasive. Edward's life, his sanctuary, his privacy, all had been compromised. Edward's shock dissolved into raw survival instinct. He dropped the tablet, the cold screen shattering slightly on his wooden floor, and raced down the stairs. Adrenaline blinded him to the danger. He acted purely on rage and the need to defend his violated space. He burst through the utility door and into the garage. Edward shouted, his voice cracking from fear and fury. "What the hell are you doing?" Sandeep turned slowly. His face was illuminated by the faint security light that filtered in from the street, and that fixed smile was back in place. Now a look of mocking amusement. He held up a hand, not in surrender, but in a mocking placation. Sandeep said, "Ah, Edward, just borrowing a little juice. I needed to check the alignment on my new diagnostic tools. You always keep your garage door unlocked, so neighborly." Edward stood his ground, pointing at the OBD port under the dash. "You broke into my house. You were tampering with my car. I saw the camera feed. I saw what you put in there." Sandeep's smile widened, but his eyes were hard, terrifyingly calm. Sandeep replied, "Edward, Edward, such a worried man. Mind your own quiet business. This car is an older model. She was making a little noise. I was concerned for my neighbor's property. Perhaps you should worry about your own nerves, or soon you won't have any business left to mind." He stepped past Edward, his massive presence violating Edward's final line of personal security, his expensive cologne filling the air with a suffocating scent of victory. Sandeep walked back across the lawn to his house, his boisterous laugh echoing in the silent street once again. The sound was no longer just annoying, it was a threat. Edward immediately called the police, scrambling to retrieve the GPS tracker and the OBD skimmer. He bagged them in plastic sandwich bags as evidence, his analyst brain taking over the terror. He knew Sandeep's laughter was a shield and his threat was absolute. When the two officers arrived an hour later, Sandeep was hosting a loud, completely normal family gathering. Music blaring, barbecue smoking in the driveway, children playing. It was a perfect, well-staged domestic scene. Edward presented the bagged evidence and the footage from the bird feeder, detailing the break-in and the attempted surveillance. The older officer sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Mr. Edward, we see a neighbor coming onto your driveway, then you confront him. He says he was just trying to help you. These devices, they could be anything. Hobby electronics. You'd need forensic analysis to prove intent. And the break-in. Your garage door was closed, not locked. He claims he thought it was shared space. Without a warrant, we can't search his house or seize those duffel bags you described." Sandeep walked over, holding a plate of barbecue. "Officer, my neighbor Edward is under a lot of stress. I think he's feeling the need for some drama in this quiet place. I'm having a nice, quiet gathering. We were just discussing landscaping earlier. The police left, frustrated, urging Edward to pursue a civil complaint. Edward watched them go, his heart sinking. He realized the police couldn't help him. Sandeep was too good at running his operation behind the camouflage of suburban normalcy. Edward was alone, and he had poked the head of a viper. He spent the next 48 hours in a frenzy, locked in his soundproof office, researching the techniques he had witnessed. He cross-referenced the tracker's serial number with known intelligent surveillance tools. The data skimmer was a bespoke piece of hardware, capable of siphoning a car's entire digital footprint, including mileage, maintenance logs, and even linked phone contacts. The pattern of cash deliveries, the financial reports Edward had already compiled, and the fake car brokering business all clicked into place. The OBD skimmer was the key. Sandeep was using the stolen VINs and digital history from local cars to create ghost cars for his high-end brokering operation. He was creating fake digital paper trails for the illicit cash, turning it into digital, clean assets. This was beyond local crime. This was a well-organized syndicate. Edward gathered all his evidence, the noise logs, the financial inconsistencies, the security footage of the tampering, and the analysis of the devices. He structured the report with the precision of a white paper, intending to take it directly to the FBI field office, bypassing local authorities entirely.